We talked about some of the basics of reporting, and an essential skill for doing any kind of story is interviewing. So get out of your comfort zones. You're talking to someone who's been very, very, very shy in the past. I'm the last person anybody thought would ever do an interview, conduct an interview, and just go up and talk to perfect strangers, and then sometimes have to talk to people who have some sort of notoriety and governors of states and political people and athletes and other sorts of people. So if I can do it, you can do it. If this is what you want to do and this is how you want to have your life follow, well, you're going to have to know how to interview. And there's some rules and some things that just you have to know. And that's what this is all about. I've conducted many, many interviews. I've got it pretty well down. With that, I think I do. It's not so bad. But there's a good way to interview and a bad way to interview. And we're going to try to find the good way to interview. All right. And away we go. All right. Learning objectives. Prepare for an interview by creating open and closed-ended questions. We'll talk about that. Compare interviewing opportunities, knowing how to approach interview sources, fixing bad questions and asking better ones, and using that wonderful thing called critical thinking to evaluate source and planned approach. How you're going to plan your interview and be on when you're interviewing, you have to know how to be able to roll with the punches of a given interview and pick up on things and nonverbal communication and physical cues and all sorts of things like that. And that's all part of interviewing. So let's get going. All right. Avoiding awkwardness. Well, if you think about it, asking someone to interview is always it's an awkward proposition to begin with, because you're asking someone to be part of your story, be it in a print form or a audio form or video form, and you're going to have lots of different people that you be interviewing, and sometimes you have to give them a call. Sometimes they may be at an event or at a news occurrence or something like that. You might book it. It might be spur of the moment. It might be a person on the street. We'll talk about all those things. But it's always a little awkward. I mean, you'll have certain people that are used to doing interviews, especially for PR firms or who work like media relations or something like that for a company. They're used to it. That's the job. They're usually pretty easy to book, just finding time to do whatever they need to do. Or they might even have created an event that they want people to come to. They're usually pretty easy to have interviews with, because they're usually polished answers. And then you've got people, you might interview experts like a professor of science for something about astronomy or something. And because they know what maybe something's happening, you have to, and then that's your authority figure, because they really know a lot about that specific subject. And so with that, you don't want to seem, that you're ignorant about certain things, you're not knowledgeable about what you're talking about. So you have to at least have some sort of base knowledge, to have to do some research there. The one thing I always do, I'm always, when I'm doing an interview, one of the first things I assure the person, well, because remember, I'm from television, and most of the time I was doing a lot of these interviews by myself, all right, in the field with my camera, getting everything. And the first things I tell them was like, all right, it's just me and you. We're having a conversation. Camera's not here. Look at me. Camera's not there. Just me and you having a conversation back and forth. That's a big part of this. I mean, and you're going to learn some tips about how to prepare questions and the way we go through this. But the best thing is trying to make sure that you and the person, you're at ease with that person, that the person feels comfortable with you, because they're gonna be able to give you more they're gonna be more comfortable giving you more in depth answers to your questions. They'll when you want to follow up on things, they'll be more open to that. So it's and just simply saying those words, it makes it's like breaking the ice. And be human, be a human being. Don't when you or interviewing isn't okay. I have this list of questions and I'm going to read them robotically and I'm scared. No, it's okay to refer to them. But remember, you're having a conversation with that person. And you want to get the most information from them. You want them to feel as comfortable as possible in this situation. And, sometimes you'll be in tough situations with certain interviews, but lots of interviews you're going to do, it's a conversation, and you want it. And the whole point is to get as much information and certain things. I am also looking for certain good sound bites to work with it. Everything's a little different, depends on your story. But that's the whole thing with interviewing. The interviews are a big part of the story, either through sources about certain topics. It could be about eyewitnesses to seeing things. That's the good crux of a story, isn't it? Well, how it's affecting the people in that story. A good story it goes around a lot of times reaction of what's going on in that story and how it affects people. The interview is an essential part of any news story, and being able to interview is an essential skill, and it takes time to try and work that and perfect that style of what you do. And yes, of course, because you think about it, life, like it says here, series of questions and answers. Every time you talk to a friend or anybody, you go back and forth and talking. You got to just think from that standpoint. Yeah, you have a specific mindset in what you want or certain information, and it's a little different, but that's what life is. And don't worry. And we first get started, it is stressful, and don't get too worried, because sometimes those of us who've been doing interviews for a while, we get a little edgy sometimes. If I were to do an interview again, I did some last time. It was like sometime last year for my MFA project and what I was doing in 360 journalism and what I was doing with that. And when I first started doing it, again, it was a little edgy, but then it didn't take long because I knew the stories I was trying to tell and knew what I was looking for, getting some information on that, and it came back to me. The interviews came back, and it was like whole thing riding a bike again, and but yeah. So don't be too anxious about the whole interview process. It's essential if you want to do this. All right. Thinking critically. All right. Why are we interviewing? All right. These are questions. These are good questions. You have to when you're interviewing, you have to be very a critical thinker because you have to be quick on your feet. You have to be able to come up with quick questions on your feet, going by what they say, and listening and not getting so caught up in the list of questions. Yes, your questions are important, and there as the base there. And I'm not saying throw them out or anything. But I'm saying it's important to be able to be quick on your feet and listen carefully, and be able to, as you're listening to them, form questions in your mind as they're saying things, to get maybe even dig a little deeper for the full or more complete story. So there's some things you have to think about, like, all right, who is this person? It makes sense, yeah. Like, why are we interviewing this person? It's how do they relate to the story? Why are we talking to this person for this story? Why are they important for this story? So, what value do they have to this story? These are all parts of why you're going to ask certain people to interview in any given story. So you have to look at that, and you have to understand each part of certain stories have certain angles, and what direction you decide to take that story depends on who you're going to have in that story to give you information and help tell the story to the people of why this is important to this community. Remember, it's audience centric. So once again, it's you have to. Well, so why who is this person? Okay, and there's different reasons for that. They make in the book they make the example of they're talking about school system, the school system, and budget cuts. Yeah, you might interview the superintendent and ask about budget cuts in classrooms and overcrowding and access to educational materials. Um, that's one way to look at it. But then you can take that, but then also talk to students affected by that. Now, I will tell you this: for many, many years, kids. I have a kid. I love kids. Kids are great. They are not great for interviews. Uh, if you do have an interview with a kid, definitely don't ask them yes or no questions. All right, they're because they're going to go with that, and for whatever reason, it's just biological. Their brains are not fully developed yet, and especially when you're looking for those quotes and those sound bites for your stories, you really have to go mining. You know, like coal miners, you have to mine for the story, mine for your answers to get more complex, more compound sentence, the detailed answers, because that's what you need to tell the story, especially in a video standpoint, where I came from, and because they just they don't have the capacity to give you full uh, answers. And so a lot of times when you ask them a question, you're going to have to say why or how, or you're going to have to pull more teeth to get more full answers. Even if you can get a couple sentences out of them, great. That's why a lot of times when you see a lot of these stories, and what does little Jimmy think of this? There's always some sort of narration for that. It's awesome because they're great for that. On a television standpoint, kids, remember, part of it is visual television, and one of the biggest things that you can get from, and the best things you can get from kids in telling those stories, are the natural sound of them interacting and them playing and doing whatever it is they're supposed to be doing, performing or whatever. The reason that you're there, that's their best value to them, not necessarily the interview with the kids most of the time, because when you do, there's going to have to be a lot of setup to when they do get their interview bites in there. It's just the way it is, and you just have to work around that. Uh, they're not there. It's not a slight against it. It's just developmentally they're not there. Biologically, they're just not there yet, and they're not able to commit. Very few kids can do that. You know, even some really smart, sharp kids who do this a little bit, and it's hard to find them. It's really hard to find them. So just know that it's like pulling teeth a lot of times. Your average kid just can't do that, so you got to set them up a lot. All right. Oh, and also, how badly do I need the source? How important are they to that story? Um, is there a lot of sources for a particular topic? Or is this person one of the very few people who really know what's going on, or might be an inside person? So you want to be able to know that you have to treat them with kid gloves and be a little more uh, reasonable, or uh, entertain them a little more, depending on the story, how important they are to that story, and that's all part of that. How critical are they to that story? So these are things you have to think about when you're doing any story you go out there to produce, be it print or audio or video wise. All right. So this is how we work. All right. Um, so it's every story is going to be a little different. Okay. How badly do I need the source? Like I said, it might be someone of real value. Then it might be just someone who you might be going to the local county fair and getting a regular person off the street. It's not that important. Okay, so you have to think about those requests. Sometimes they'll ask you for anonymity or off the record, which we'll talk about soon, depending on your story. How important are they to that story? And you have to sit down and take a look and think, okay, I can't, I can't do this story without them. What are their requests? Are they reasonable? Um, it's just so these are things you have to think about. There's going to be doing lots of different types of stories, and every story is a little different. Other things. Sometimes people, especially in this day and time where you've got quick turnarounds, it's always seems to be more and more and more and more work, and you're not getting paid for it anymore, and you've got all these wonderful electronic sources, and it's in some ways it's easier, and communication has been easier in a lot of ways. Um, Sometimes email interviews can work, like after you've had an interview with someone, or there's a couple of quick little details that you weren't sure of, or you just wanted the spelling of someone, or just it could be confirmation of a quick little piece of information that's easily answered through an email, then that's okay. Uh, so for that reason, for simple answers, they're fine for that. Also, sometimes people like doing that because they can sit and think about that. It's not necessarily good for you. That's pros for the people interviewing, the interview subject, person you're interviewing. But then also it does have the standpoint from, oh, I never said that. Well, you wrote it right down. It's in your email, so you can't really say you never said that when you actually wrote it in your email. I directly copied and pasted exactly what you said, put some quotes around it, and I. What do you want me to do? You wrote that. Um, so they have that aspect, but there's so many other aspects of how email doesn't work well. Lots of times, well, one, you're not bonding with them, you're not meeting with them. I've been in many many interviews, and there is, like I said, you're. It's more than just me asking questions and that person answering. You're setting up a relationship, even though it might be just a short relationship. You're trying to bond with them. You're trying to connect with them. It's more than just answering a bunch of questions and them go a monotone way. You're having a conversation. That's why I say when you first start, reassure them that this is a conversation where we're just going back and forth, and um, they need to get some information. And they'll be much more open. If you're doing it through email, you're not going to get that face to face bond, that face to face connection that when you're talking with them, and you're not going to be able to pick up on tones. You're not going to be able to pick up on nonverbal communication. You're not going to be able to pick up on certain information or be able to even follow up on things that they might say in some instances because you weren't there. You weren't in the room with them talking to them because, as you know, people if they're verbal communication and nonverbal communication, and you know when you're talking to someone what that atmosphere is about and how it's going there. You cannot substitute that with email. And you're not gonna get as complete a picture with those email interviews. That's not gonna happen. And when you're sitting there right across from them, it's very different. You bond much differently. That's I would try to stay away from email interviews as much as possible. Um, and especially with what I do from the video side, I need to see the person. It's from video. It's like I can't really. People tried to do. Oh, we'll do it through email. I can't do it through email. I'm producing a video. I need this. I mean, I need at least. Now we're using a lot of because of the pandemic. We're using they're using a lot of you know Zoom type things, which we would they've done in the past and Skype and stuff. It's been used. It's not to say it hasn't been, but now because of where we are, they're using it more than ever, and that's because of the extreme situation. But you're still wanting to get that person at least. You're at least somewhat talking to them, connecting with them in some way. Um, it's not quite as good as face to face, but at least it's a step. It's definitely better than just an email. So don't be lazy with that. Sometimes it's just it's easier to do that. Don't. This isn't about being easy. It's about doing the right job and doing it well. A lot of people, I think it's part of the problems that we have with journalism today. People just take advantage of all the technological advances and don't go in as depth, and we don't get as good a product as we should as journalists. All right, some preparing. That those P words. Proper pre-production planning prevents piss poor performance. Perseverance. This goes to it in anything you do. It's not just TV or film. It's anything you do, and this is among that. You gotta prepare for that interview. Especially if, lots of times I didn't have time to do all this research. I had to get to where I needed to get, and maybe I was able to check up on something real quick on my phone, or I got a packet from my assignment desk with some information. Um, and it'll depend on the event and who I was talking to, and but if you have the time, a lot of times you will. Especially talking to certain people. It goes back to who you're talking to. Find out some information about what they've said, bigger things that they've done. See what directly relates to what you're going to talk to them about. Maybe things that they've said in the past or things that are related to them. So when you're in there and you're in, you're doing all your questions, they'll know. They'll know if you've done your homework because you're gonna get that look that look in their eyes. And when you ask them about something that you specifically looked up and they know that you would not know that unless um, that you did your homework, and you'll get the little eyebrow raise, huh? They really, and that will that aspect of you showing that you did your homework about what they're doing, that showing that you have real interest in that story, that you have interest in what they have to say, and you've impressed them at least a little bit on on the fact that you're putting in the work and it's not just going through the motions. And you're going to get more in-depth answers. You're going to get a little bit of respect from that person, and I just and simple, and you'll see it just in the simple eyebrow or eyebrow raise. Huh? They did their homework. That means a lot. If you don't think it means a lot, and then you're not going to be as good a reporter as you should be. So that means just scouring as much as you can in the amount of time you have before that interview to see what else you can get. Clips, promo websites, press, whatever you can find on whatever it is whatever you're looking for. It will make you more well versed and give a better idea, because then that'll help you form even more questions and have a smoother conversation with that person. All right. All right. Some other interviewing basics. Getting the interview. All right. Yeah, you can do it through email. You can do it through the phone. You can, lots of times. Sometimes you'll have some sort of desk. I had an assignment desk in TV station. I'm sure they have some sort of desk and sources at the newspapers and stuff like that, where they'll probably help you out too. But a lot of it is your homework that you do. How do you get there? You could be email, you could call them. I mean, it's, however way, Skype and whatever, to be able to get that interview. And so it's if trying to find a time that works with that person, how you're going to do that, and it also and it can be tough out of the blue. I had that issue a few years, not so long ago when I was doing lots of projects where interviews were involved, and I had to go all over Pennsylvania to interview people and go shoot places, and I had to go and I had to contact them. It's like, hey, I'm doing some projects here, and I'm doing stories on the following, and uh, they had to I had to go and actually call or email these people, and they were very gracious. They were willing to do, and they don't know me from a hole in the wall, but they were willing to work with me. I was lucky to be able to work with these people, and these were essential people. I met. It's so and they were essential to the stories I was doing. But I had to go and talk to them, and I had to do some interview. I had to do some research on these people and who these people are. So I gave it a shot, and I was lucky enough to get them. I'm the Pennsylvania Teacher of the Year. I was doing a thing on teachers and students and a series of stuff on that, and what makes a good teacher. And they were willing to talk with me. I was able to go in on one of their work days uh, when they weren't teaching. They gave me time to sit down with them, and I was lucky for that, and I was grateful for that. And my pieces came out better because of it. Um, and then interacting with the source. It's meeting with them face to face, and like I said, that bond between you, going back and forth, and trying to figure out who that person is and what they feel comfortable with. So when you first go in, try to be somewhat formal, Mr. or Miss or whatever the case may be, with whoever you're talking with. And then they'll usually say, "Oh, just call me Joe," or "Just call me Michelle," or whatever. The what I'm saying here. Um, and that's just go and being a little more professional and conservative with how you deal with them. And then usually that's normally my experience has been, you know, especially everyday people and even people who are experts. They'll say, "Oh, just call me this." So just play that by ear, see how that works. It's always best to meet face to face with these people, always, and always have a recording device. I was always using it. I always have a camera, so and they know that going in. But if you're not, even if you're not doing the heck, you might be forced to do the camera now. Even if you're at a print outlet, a web outlet, um, they now want stuff, video interviews anyway. So even though it's for a newspaper, if you work for a newspaper, it's we have some sort of recording device because you're not going to be able to write everything down. You're gonna be writing notes and your shorthand of whatever your shorthand works for you, but you're not going to catch everything. That's what the recordings are for. And always ask. If I always go in and tell them I'm doing a documentary, I'm working at the news, so for a station, they know it's going to be on TV, so they're expecting a camera. But if you are print, just let them know I need to record this. And usually, if they agree to, they know you're from a press outlet. They're like, yeah, well, yeah, of course, you need something recorded. Um, Very rarely might you find someone who's like, oh no, I can't be recorded. Okay. I don't know if you have it anymore. I don't. We're this isn't the past where that was the case as much. Um, it's so just make sure, but still do give them the option. It's like, oh, is it okay if I record this? Chances are they're probably gonna say yes, because they know what they're asking, and so. All right. And then working with your questions. Basically, you're going to come up with four to five basic questions on the big parts of what you're going to be talking to them about. Because each story is a little different, especially when you're dealing with maybe scientific things or really specified topics. And then you kind of try to build off of that, build off what they're saying. And also remember, you can have your research that you've done before doing this as well. So you'll have even more information to help build those questions and give you at least a base of things going into that interview to work with. All right. So you're going to have those base. You're going to have the rough sketch of the big things. And it's, but that's all part of it. It's all part of doing these interviews. Flow. You'll know if an interview is going well, on how well um, you go back and forth, how you're talking to each other. Like I said, first thing you do is tell them it's a conversation. We're just talking, going back and forth. Um, and that helps a lot. But that's why I say don't have a piece of paper. Don't hide behind that piece of paper and sound like a robot. All right, you're talking to that person. You're interested in that person, and you will get a better reaction from that and more information from that person. And so it's going back and forth. So it won't seem that hard. Though it's an interview, it's you're just basically talking to them. It's you're getting information from them, and it's imperative that they're comfortable with you. And it can be intimidating, especially when they're not used to. They might be well versed in their topic, but they might not be well versed in being on camera. They might not be well versed in about articles. That's all part of what we do, and it's important. So if you're gonna have good flow, it's gonna be that conversation. It's not just gonna be like two people just talking about something. Man, those are the best interviews. And then it'd be easier. It's also when you have that connection. Sometimes you might have to ask some tough questions. But if you've already established that rapport with that person, it's going to be easier. So I'm saying it's going to be easy, but it's going to be easier to ask the question and do it in a way that you can soften the blow before it, because you've already established a rapport with that person. To ask those tough questions sometimes, and it pops up. It does. Make sure you're taking notes. Yes, I said use a recorder, but you have to also take some other notes that help with what you're writing. You always need to take notes. It's part of it. Um, and then the last thing you always ask is, anything else you think I should know? I always say, all right, a thing I always say, is there anything else I might have not asked you that you think is important that you want to get to the folks out there? That sounds kind of jokesy and whatever and corny, but remember, from television. So I always also say, oh, why didn't he ask me about this, or why didn't he ask me about that? This is me giving you that opportunity, and it's almost got like a yes or no thing, and that's something I always tell people to do. When that's another thing, don't, for the most part, don't try to, when you ask a question, don't have them in a way that will give an answer of a yes or a no when you're in the context of that full-fledged interview. You have to be able to form the question so you can get the answers that informationally, but you also want good quotes. You want them to answer the question in a way that it gives you good content to work with when you're talking about the topics you're talking about. From even from if it's print or audio or from television standpoint, especially from a television standpoint, you need some sentences in there and to build upon, and the more the better. And you can do that by the way you form your questions. So try as much as possible to stay away from yes or no questions. Yeah, in that last wrap up thing, yeah, there is kind of a possibility or yes or no. And sometimes they might have just talked about everything, and and we've done a good job. We got everything. Um, no, it's the end of the answer is no. Then okay, great. But that's like the last question. Also, here's an important aspect. Um, when you especially and this is more, and we'll talk about those soon. The per, the person on the street interview. First question I always ask is state and spell your first and last name, and give me, and this is weird, your title, why you're there, why am I talking to you, because it's very easy to get spellings wrong. Oh, John Smith. How do you spell it? Jonsmyth. You could have gotten that wrong. You don't want to get that wrong. It sounds stupid. You know how many people make that mistake? Lots of people make that mistake. That's a basic question. And yeah, it's awkward to say what's your title. Eh, it's not necessarily a title, especially in a man on the street. Oh, where you from? It's like maybe you're at a county fair. Oh, I'm from York or I'm from Hanover or whatever the case may be, and maybe you find out because that's more for like the lower third for that. But that's something I'm always thinking about because my needs are a little different, but you still have to know how to spell the people's names. If you're talking to someone of some significance, you probably already have the spelling of their name, and you might not necessarily know their official title. It might have changed, so you may want so you in the case that you're talking to like a professor or something like that, maybe they have a specific title that's appropriate for them. Um, or maybe they just got a promotion or something like that, just to kind of get a, a feeling for who they officially are. That's important to ask. All right. Okay.